Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our final morning of the pandemic reading series. So this morning is a little different. You've just got Mel and me, and it's gonna be a little more casual. We're just gonna have a chat, and we'll read a bit from our novels. But before we go on, I want to thank all the authors who have been on this program so far. You've just been wonderful, and it has been an absolute delight to meet you all online, at least, and hear you read. And thank you for doing that and for helping us pass the time during these strange months we've had. So, welcome, Mel. What's it like on Bowen?
It's a little gray today, but we had some promise of summer yesterday.
Yeah. Well, it's the West Coast this summer. It's been alternating gray and beautiful. So
Yeah, but full of wildlife, so that's nice.
oh, that's good. So yeah, today we're just going to read a bit of our novels. Of the her new version, The Extra, is coming out this year, and we have a new version of the cover, which is just looking absolutely spiffy. So Mel is going to read from that later. So we're saving the best to last.
Oh, yeah, right. Alenia rules, baby.
But I am going to read first. Gosh, I'm having problems. Figures the last day, and it's been technical issues all the way this morning. We barely didn't get on. These are my two novels, and Alenia Song Overture and Alenia Song Aria. So I am going to read from Aria, which was just released this spring. So for those of you who don't know, the story starts when she's a young girl, and she discovers that she has the ability to sing music into magic, which is very dangerous because she almost kills her baby brother when she's doing it. It's also the story of her mother and her grandmother when they were younger women. So Aria picks up where Alenia leaves off. It's not too much of a spoiler to say at the end of book one, she runs away from home, full of anger for things she's discovered about the lies her parents and her nurse have told her all her life. The stories of her mother and her grandmother are told taking place during the first book. So what I'm going to read today is a segment from Loresa's story, which happened in Alenia's time in the first book, but this one is told from Loresa's point of view. So this gives us a little bit of backstory, and it happens when her Loresa's father, Chanist, has arrived and has yet to meet his granddaughters. They are estranged, and he hasn't met any of his grandchildren yet. Loresa calls Chanist as she's about to leave her father and his squire to sort out their baggage in the guest chamber. He crosses to the door out of range of the squire's hearing and leans against the lintel. When might I see my grandchildren? He's not a very tall man, and his eyes are level with Loresa's. His bearded face and slightly beery breath a mixture of familiarity and uncomfortable distance. The jug of ale that was brought up when he arrived had been drained already, and only a small portion of that was taken by the squire to slake the dust of the road. She leans away from his breath, wishing she felt happier about seeing her father for the first time in 5 years. Still, the watery blue eyes before her don't disguise the longing. Soon, Papa, she promises. Alanry is still napping, and Alenia should be, though she's probably playing with the litter of pups in the kennel. Why don't you rest and change from your traveling clothes? And let that beer settle, she thinks. And I'll bring them to you both when they're awake and clean. And hope you are the same, is the unspoken addendum. She gives him a dutiful daughterly kiss on the cheek and closes the door after herself. Her first destination is straight to the buttery to ensure that only very well-watered wine is sent to the guest chamber. Her next is to the nursery where, as she can tell from the ache in her breasts before she's halfway back up the stairs, Alanry is waiting for his lunch. When the junior nurse brings Elenia, filthy from the kennels and disgruntled at having been interrupted at play, Larissa is still wrestling with her dilemma. Alanry has fallen back asleep at the breast, so Larissa has to lean over him to kiss her daughter. The child squirms out of the embrace, prickly and put out. Elenia, love, I need you to wash and put on your best gown. Elenia twists her face into a deeper scowl. Why, I don't like it, it's itchy. There's someone I want you to meet. The scowl twists deeper still, and the child glares at her mother, but eventually complies. The decision is still not made when Larissa heads for the guest chamber with a shiny yet surly child in her train and a dozing baby in her arms. She holds her breath, hoping her father is respectably awake. She sent a page to warn him of his family's imminent visit half an hour ago. That must have been enough time. The held breath partially escapes as his voice, clear and loud, responds to her knock. There he is, in the large armchair by the hearth, clothed in fine court garb, as regal and yet welcoming as she remembers him from childhood. She releases the rest of her breath and takes a long, slow one back in. The windows are open, the air is clear, and her decision is made. There have been enough lies surrounding her family. She will not add more to the burden, nor deny her children at least one honest relationship. Bad enough Elenia knows her grandmother only as a nurse. Bad enough she'll never know her father. She touches her daughter's shoulders and whispers, "Curtsy," out of the corner of her mouth. The girl is still learning that skill and accomplishes it unwillingly, but with enough childish charm to widen Chanist's smile and bring one to Larissa's lips as well. Elenia, love, this is your grandfather. Elenia cocks her head to one side and stares at Chanist. My grandfather is dead, she declares, and the other one is the Prince of Brandishire, supplies Chanist, chuckling. And since I'm more or less still alive, old though I might be, I must be the other one. He rises from his chair, makes a deep obeisance, and takes her small, soft hand in his large square one, kissing the fingers. I am delighted to meet my only granddaughter at last, Your Grace. Larissa is impressed with his charm. Any attempt at hugs or kisses would have instantly estranged her thorny daughter. He straightens with a hand on his back. Oof, alas, I'm out of practice, or perhaps too old for such courtly manners. He winks at Elenia, charming her all over again. Shall we come to an arrangement? We shall not bow and curtsy to one another, and you may call me Grandpapa, if I need not call you Your Grace. Elenia solemnly weighs this offer and nods with a dignity beyond her years. All right, Grandpapa. The last word rolls out slowly as if she tasted it first. Wonderful. And will you introduce me to your brother, Your Grace, Elenia? Her tiny shoulders slump as she remembers she's not the sole center of attention. But she dutifully stands on tiptoe as Larissa lowers her arm to reveal the now wide-awake face nestled in them. Grandpapa, this is Alanry. She can't help wrinkling her nose a little at the name. You don't need to call him anything special. Alanry, this is his, Royal Highness, the, Prince of, Brandishire. This time Janice lets her struggle with the word on her own. She leans close to the baby then and whispers, though both the adults can hear. You must bow to him, or else you'll go to prison.
I love it. I love Elenia. What a great reading.
Thanks, Mel.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful story.
I accomplished that with all sorts of noises happening in the background, so hopefully you didn't pick those up on the mic too much. Got dogs.
Well, I certainly didn't. None of the noises, all the adventure. It's a fantastic adventure story.
Oh, thank you.
Grand fantasy. And a grand fantasy.
Looks like there are some questions coming in on from the audience. So if you're listening, watching on YouTube, feel free to throw questions at us, not just about our books, about anything you want to know about the press. Just send us questions. Dana Storino wrote, my niece's name is Aria. My brother-in-law is a music teacher. Oh, well, that's nice. another question was, with 3 points of view in each book, how do you weave and keep straight the different narratives? I don't know, actually. I don't plot it out or do anything ahead of time. After I've written both or all three sections, I do create a spreadsheet while I'm going through my second draft. So the spreadsheet has each scene um, in each segment, and all I do in that is just make a note of the date. So with the first book, Overture, it seemed very simple. It all worked when I wove the stories back together again. They all fit perfectly, and the timelines worked. With Area, for some reason, I had a terrible time fitting the segments in where they needed to be to keep the timelines of each character contiguous. So that was my spread. I was back and forth to my spreadsheet all the time, but that again was only after I had written it all. I needed to get the story out first, and then worry about where the different pieces needed to go after. Um, Jade and Company wrote, when did you start writing and what training did you go through beforehand? I started writing when I was a kid. my first my first story, I think my mom still has it, is a stapled together retelling of Red Riding Hood when I was 4, with large illustrations all done in red Sharpie. And I think it was a feminist manifesto of some sort, because it's very clear that Red Riding Hood is a girl from the drawings, and there are just one word on each page. So that was my first attempt at writing. But seriously, I wrote throughout high school. I went to several creative writing conferences, or was sent by my teachers, and I kind of always knew I wanted to write, but it took me until I did the Hour Stories with Dale Adams Segal, um, which was, gosh, probably about 20 years ago now, before I could sit down and write without my inner critic getting in the way. And that process has been incredibly helpful to me. And we all use it, right, Mel? Like
Yeah.
we all use those Hour Stories. Um, and in fact, we invite our audience to come and write with us on writing workshops once a month.
Well, that's always a treat.
So there's a question from Jen Wynand, who says, I love a strong heroine. What would Stella and Elena make of life under a pandemic? So, what would Stella make of life under the pandemic?
Stella doesn't get very many visitors anyway in the Fairmount Manor Care Home. I would think that she would be, first of all, trying to find out what's going on, because they won't be wanting to panic people. And then what we've noticed is people being wonderful and people being very sly. So I think she'd have plenty to investigate.
I'm sure there would be lots to figure out and
Yeah.
keep her busy. Um, as for Elena, it's interesting. There's a novella that I wrote that comes in between the second and third books. Part of that is coming out in the current issue of Pulp Literature, which, by the way, we are launching on Sunday on Discord, and you're all invited to join us there. We'll put links up in the YouTube chat for this. Um, and I wrote this a couple of years ago, but it turns out that they're dealing with an infectious agent, and she's in a foreign country where she and her and people with her have no immunity to this disease. So it felt, when I've been revising it during the pandemic, it's felt very relevant. But of course, in Elena's world, uh, medicine is a little bit different. There is magic, there is healing magic, but it's still unknown pathogens are still quite a problem for them. Little blurb. When Mel's done her reading, we are going to announce the shortlist for the Hummingbird. Now, we announced the names last week, but we did not announce the story titles. So we are going to announce those story titles for the Hummingbird. So stay tuned for that if you are here to find out the shortlist for the Hummingbird. And we will be announcing the winners of the Hummingbird Flash Fiction Prize at our launch on Sunday. So please join us then. And we hope to have the shortlisted authors present so that the winners, when they find out, will be able to read. So, authors, if you're listening there, maybe prepare your story a little bit just in case you win. So, Mel, tell us a little bit about what you're about to read from.
The Extra, the first of the Frankie Ray novels about silver screen Hollywood. And my personal passion when I was quite young, in my teens, I just couldn't get enough of silver screen Hollywood, especially in the 1930s. And my heroes were Olivia de Havilland and Leslie Howard and David Niven. And reading everything I could get my hands on, totally wasting my time, which you've all experienced something that came back to make a great background. So I thought, what if I was could I write a mystery adventure about two Vancouver girls, one beautiful, one average, running away to Hollywood to become stars and becoming embroiled in the machinations of ambition and great talent and great disappointment that was going on at the time for many. So this is The Extra, a Monument Studios mystery, Chapter 1, May 7th, 1934. Paradise Gardens Villas, Sunset Boulevard, Hollywood. Sunlight through the bungalow window highlighted the needle-thin black lines crisscrossing the dead man's knuckles. The young woman dampened a tea cloth at the sink and carried it to the sofa to clean her lover's lifeless hands and face. She took up one grimy hand and then the other, scrubbed them with her damp cloth. There were so many tiny creases in a person's skin where soil could collect. When she was satisfied, she set his left hand across his lap and his right palm down at his side. His hand looked empty there, forlorn. She fumbled in her pocket and brought out an orange she'd plucked from the tree in the back garden. There were oranges everywhere in Hollywood in springtime. This one was a beauty. She touched the fruit to her nose and smelled the bittersweet peel before bending his cool fingers around it. Where the lapel of his jacket had slipped back, she could see the bullet hole. She made a little clicking sound and pulled the jacket straight. She would not cry. In fact, she must not cry. She bent down beside him and kissed his mouth. Goodbye. It was not enough. Good night, sweet prince. A show business farewell. He would have liked that. Chapter 2, 9 days earlier, Vancouver, Canada, 1,000 miles north of Hollywood. Francesca Ray smacked the chalk dust off the backside of her school skirt, unhooked her stockings, and rolled them down around her ankles. She knew she ought to peel some parsnips and potatoes for supper, but spring weather made a person restless somehow, as if something important were coming, some great event that made root vegetables seem wintry and irrelevant. She sidled past her father's bedroom and out the front door onto the stoop. The paperboy cycled up, whistling through his teeth, and she saw him toss the afternoon newspaper her way, just in time to snatch it out of the air. Pats leaned on his handlebars and shook his head. "You should have been a fella, Frankie," he said. "You're ready for anything." "It's Miss Ray to you, Pats." She threw the newspaper back, loose and low, the way her fiancé had shown her. "And keep the paper. Dad stopped it." He started it again. The paper flew back at her. "Say, Frankie, you ought to take a look at the classifieds. There's an ad in there, and if it means what I think it means, you've got trouble in your teapot." "Cheeky," she called after him, but he'd already pedaled halfway down the block, slinging his papers in clever arcs against the neighbors' doors. Pats had never been what you'd call respectful, but he had a bean or two in his head. So Frankie opened the newspaper to the back. She looked around for somewhere ladylike to perch, but in the end plunked herself down on the top porch step to study the small print classifieds in the light of the blinkered April sun. Somebody had lost a dog. Somebody else had found a lady's sequin coin purse contents intact. A whole column of the usual hopefuls searched for work or cheap accommodation. But at the top of the page, one black boxed ad jumped out at her. Talent search. Young actress. A talent search was exciting enough for an ad in a Vancouver newspaper, but the sort of acting work proposed thoroughly electrified her. To work in films. Frankie cast a glance at her father's bedroom window. She slipped the paper inside her cardigan, sprinted out through the front hall, and dashed up the stairs to her room in the pointed gable above the front steps. She shut the door behind her. With her back to the bedroom door, she snapped the paper open. Was the ad baloney, or was it not? Talent search. Young actress to work in films, Hollywood studio production beginning May 1934. Next came the dodgy part. She scowled and set the paper down on the windowsill atop a stack of movie magazines. Still frowning, she hung up her school skirt in her closet and buttoned herself into her blue house dress. She pulled the orange crate that served as her hope chest up to the window and looked out over West 36th Avenue. She spread the newspaper out on top of the photoplay and movie mirror magazines and reread the ad's last bit, the dodgy bit. Production beginning May 1934, no experience required. Make yourself available at the Dominion Theatre, 65 Granville Street, 11:30 p.m. to 1 o'clock a.m. Trouble in your teapot. Even a newspaper boy like Pats knew a thorn patch when he saw it. No experience required at 11:30 p.m. Trouble was putting it mildly. Still, the ad was in a reputable paper. Frankie's father had taken the province on and off as far back as she could remember. She had even been a member of the kids' club, a secret greeting, Klahowya. She and her friend Connie still had the tiny club totem pole pin tucked away among their treasures. Frankie was certain the province would check their ads as they did their stories. Otherwise, what was there to stop any old murderer or thief for advertising for a victim when times were lean? Frankie became aware of a clamoring outside. She opened her window, rested her elbows on the movie magazines, and felt her scowl melt away. Her good friend Connie's progress down their street never failed to entertain. Today, Connie led a noisy parade of neighborhood children along 36th Avenue. Hazel, mother to the three smallest girls on the street, brought up the rear. Connie Mooney, where'd you get that hair? A boy in a Cub Scout's shirt asked. For a birthday present. Connie tossed her copper head. The scout guffawed and scampered off. Hazel's kids gazed up at Connie adoringly. For who didn't love Connie? Who didn't smile back at her white smile and laugh along with her easy laughter? This afternoon, Connie's excitement was such that you could almost see the lights shoot out of the top of her head, the sort of conical beams that swept the indigo skies above Hollywood in magazines. Connie, Hazel, and the kids all tumbled to a stop at Frankie's walk. Hazel, at 23, was 2 years older than Connie and Frankie, which made her the youngest wife on 36th Avenue. She smacked playfully at her scuttling daughters with her own copy of the province, set her hands on her hips, and grinned up at Frankie. In the leaf-filtered light, her freckles and those of her children stood out like pepper and cream. Did you see the paper yet? Frankie, mindful of her father, asleep in the room below, silently waved her paper back at Hazel to show that she had read it. Connie, her red hair crackling, set Hazel's youngest on her hip. She said, "Looky here, Frankie. Clark Gable autographed our newspaper and dropped it at my door." "Don't wake Dad," Frankie waved both hands. But you might as well ask cats not to yowl as to beg Connie for quiet. She sang out, "Hey-de-hoo-de-hee-de-hee." "Oh, for Pete's sake, Connie, put a lid on it." Hazel's kids piped up the musical reply, "Heidi, Heidi, Heidi, hi." A bellow burst from Frankie's father's bedroom window. From behind closed curtains, Sheridan D. Ray let fly a terrible oath, one far too ripe for the tender ears of Hazel's daughters, obviously seconds away from belting out another chorus of the popular song. Frankie leaped down the stairs, hurried out the front door, and took the stoop in one jump. She herded the lot of them away from the house and into the grassy verge beneath the line of maple trees on the street. Connie held out the newspaper. With a glance over her shoulder to her father's darkened bedroom window, Frankie took the paper from her. "I've seen the ad for the movie audition, and I think it's baloney. I wish I didn't, Connie, but I do." But it's not.
Thanks, Mel. That was wonderful. I love those characters. I love Frankie and Connie. They're just such a great pair of characters, and the whole, you've captured the language of the time and the atmosphere of the time so perfectly. I mean, not that I was there. Almost old enough now.
I always wished I was there.
Yeah,
Silver
simpler
screen
times.
Hollywood.
Yeah.
I don't know that they were simpler, but they certainly are glamorous from this distance.
Yes, I think that's true of all time periods. They all seem more glamorous in retrospect.
Maybe that's the great thing about fantasy worlds, about like Alania's.
Yeah.
They're always glamorous. Wonderful.
We're almost out of time. I've got a few questions from the audience. Dana Starina says, "I love the cover and I like the storyline."
That's lovely. Thanks, Dana.
And they also loved the line, "A show business farewell, he would have liked that." I love that line too.
Thank you.
And
that's lovely to hear. Thank you.
And there's a question from Margaret Jameson. I'm not sure who this was for because it came sort of right in between the segments, but it's growing up, which writers inspired you and which writers inspire you today? So I'm going to throw that to you.
Oh, well, gosh, I have to. You end up back in the 1930s again. P.G. Wodehouse and Dorothy Sayers, and of course Agatha Christie, and Betty MacDonald, the humorist. The can-do attitude in my books comes from her, and my good fortune in knowing a woman who died at 102 and was exactly Frankie's age and Frankie's time. So I could get the unusual spirit of the age. It's really dynamic from her.
Right. And I definitely hear Wodehouse in your Stella books. Like they are very Woodhouseian.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I don't. My inspiration, at least for my fantasy works, I mean, probably comes from reading the Chronicles of Narnia 1,000 times when I was a kid. Those, and reading them to my kids later in life, I've realized how well written they were, how very concise, and how much C.S. Lewis could tell you in a single line of prose. And of course, I also loved, Lord of the Rings and all those things. But fantasy authors that really stood out for me were C.J. Sherry and Andre Norton. A little bit later, Mary Gentle is amazing and very original. So those in my genre, and then out of my genre, I'm always immensely impressed by Margaret Atwood and Barbara Kingsolver. I think the way Barbara Kingsolver writes family really sticks with me, and I think it influences how I write family as well. And Fresh Voice, I don't know who that is, but said, "Mel, I love the way you read."
Oh, thank you. That's lovely to hear. Thanks very much.
And Jen asked, it's so evocative. How do you see your scenes?
Oh, is that for me?
Yeah.
Well, as movie scenes, of course.
I can almost hear the flickering.
I do. I outline movie style wise, and I write all my my things with the movie pace in mind. Right. Things happening.
Okay. Well, we have gone over time, but I'm not going to keep our hummingbird contestants in suspense any longer. So those of you waiting to find out what the shortlisted stories were, I'm going to read them out in order of author first name. So we have The Fair in the Wood by Andrew Moore, and In as a Lion, Out as a Lamb, also by Andrew Moore. Congratulations for having 2 pieces in the shortlist. We have Rivers 1001 Voices by Cadence Mandibura. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. And The Weeping Pools, also by Cadence. So again, congratulations for having 2 stories in the shortlist. We have Revenant by Candace Kubinek, The Wife by Hannah Van Didden, Dying to Travel by Jade Williams, Glimpse of a Goddess by Laura Kuhlman, Attention Management by Sorum-Imi Hanarejima, and You Will Do This by Stephen Simonchik. So congratulations to all these shortlisted writers. We hope to have several of them, if not all of them, at our launch on Sunday. And the launch is Sunday at 2 p.m. It goes from 2 to 4, and it is on Discord. We will send out a link. There is also an Eventbrite event out there, and you can get the link from there. So please join us then to find out who the ultimate winner and runners-up are, who will take home the big prize. And we hope that there will be at least a couple of the writers there able to read the stories out to you at the time. We also have a whole bunch of other stories coming up. So we have issue 27. This is the print proof that I have in my hand here.
Looks bad.
We've got with a beautiful cover by Mel. Oh, there we go. There.
I love the way it's designed.
And so we're going to have our Daniel Lester, Hannah Van Didden coming to us very early in the morning from Australia, Kim Harbridge, Kim Martins, several others. And we also have editor Mary Rykov, who's going to read from her new book, Some Conditions Apply, which, again, I just received the hard copy of this. Ooh, where is it there? Some Conditions Apply, a wonderful book. Mary is our proofreader, but she is also a poet and has written this wonderful book. So join us. We'll have lots of readings. There will be door prizes. There will be all sorts of questions and answers, and you'll actually have a chance to talk to authors in person over the internet. So as good as we get in these days. So thank you, everybody, for joining us over these past weeks. I think this is episode 16 or 7. I'm not. I've lost track by now, but it's been, like I said, it's been wonderful, and we are not leaving you all together. We have a podcast coming up. We don't have an exact air date, but sometime in August, you will be getting a podcast, and you will be able to send questions into us ahead of time. So if you have writing questions, editing questions, things like that, you'll be able to send them in or post them to our Instagram, and we will attempt to answer your questions on the podcast. We'll have readings, we'll have guests, we'll have interviews. It'll be a lot of fun. It just won't be on camera like this is, so, and it won't be live, so that we can actually get a bunch of episodes in the can and have a rest now and again.
Sounds wonderful. Can't wait.
So thanks, Mel. And it's just thank you for being my backup all this time too. Mel is usually the one throwing me the questions from backstage, and today we have Genevieve Winan doing that. So thanks, Jen. And
thanks, Jen.
We'll
yeah, it's been such a great time listening to so many amazing readings. Everybody's just been fantastic.
It has been. It has been really wonderful, and authors have been so generous with their time. So yeah, thank you all. Stay safe out there. Bye.
Bye.